Mr. Clerk, please record.
There's a quorum present, Mr. President.
Thank you. Are there any corrections for the journal?
I have no corrections this morning.
Are there any messages, reports, or announcements?
I have neither messages nor reports nor announcements, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Please proceed to the first item on the agenda. Senator Frederickson, you are recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that a committee of 5 be appointed to escort the governor of the state of Nebraska to the legislative chamber to deliver his State of the State address.
That is a debatable motion. Senator Frederickson, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to yield my time to Senator Wayne.
Senator Wayne, you have 9 minutes, 58 seconds.
Okay, I'll tell you how to do it. Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a debatable motion. I told you we would take some time up and we're going to talk about some things. And the two things I want to talk about, the most important thing I'm going to talk about today, which is most pressing, is the airport business park. And I'm going to talk to you about a little bit of the problems that I have, and I'm going to give you a high level of it. And we'll be here for a while because I'm going to talk about why this is such a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we may miss. Now, I know many people are just talking on the floor and not really engaged, and that's okay because it's going to be a long day of conversation. So first, I would like to ask Senator Holcroft a question.
Senator Holcroft, will you yield to a question?
Yes, I will.
Senator Holcroft, I have two simple questions for you, and I told you ahead of time, I'm not trying to play gotcha with anybody on the mic. Is a public powered, is Power District putting transmission lines through your district?
Yes, they're running a transmission line from the south, from the Cass County substation up to the new Turtle Creek substation.
And they'll be required, I guess 3 questions. They'll be required to take some people's land or have some kind of easements on that land, correct?
Well, there'll be some easements for the plant, but they've held several meetings, 4 community meetings, 2 leadership meetings. And if you look at their route, it's right along parcel lines. They've made a real effort not to go across, from point A to point B.
And I want to make a point there. You said they held community meetings?
Yes, there are four community meetings. 4 community meetings.
Thank you. Will Senator Brewer yield to a question?
Senator Brewer, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator Brewer, I remember all my years down here, you had a big fight with this thing called the R line. Do you recall that?
Yes, very clearly.
So the R line, were there community meetings and did they allow people to give input?
Yes, there were extensive meetings over about a 3-year period.
Over about a 3-year period. Thank you, Senator Brewer. Colleagues, that's the first point I'm going to bring up about the airport park. We are going to spend $90 million in an area that I tremendously want to invest in. But my biggest problem with this grant and this grant application was there was no community engagement and no community input. What you just heard from is 2 senators out, one in Sarpy County and one in Western Nebraska, that before the state or a political subdivision or any investment that even might require taking some land or even an easement, there are community meetings and there are community engagement, but not for East Omaha. We don't seem to be that important, nor do we seem to have our voices valued, not just by this body, but this administration. That is just a clear example of no community input, no community engagement. And if you don't believe me, I can put you in contact with multiple people in East Omaha who they first learned about this opportunity to invest in their neighborhoods via social media and Facebook and word of mouth. And the word of mouth, believe it or not, came from the city of Omaha. When they started talking about an inland port and it started getting a little buzz, they actually heard about it. So again, we are going to do something to this community without this community's input at all. When you look at the articles on the Examiner and other media outlets, they've all but confirmed they have not had any community input. So while today that might be a highlight, from the administration, I will tell you from the community standpoint, it is another arrow being shot in their eye about how they are disrespecting this community. But not just that. I have a simple question that I want to ask this body. Do you think government should lie? Do you believe that government should lie to the people that they represent? That is the question that I have. If you think government shouldn't lie, I'm going to walk you through the application process and the application today that DED put out, in which they lied to this community and they lied to potential applicants on what they believed should happen. So first, we passed this. There was a lot of debate. We passed out a lot of information to this body and to the urban affairs community over and over and over. And one of the things that we passed out was a site plan and a plan for this area that had about 6 phases. And in urban affairs and on this floor, we talked about how it was going to be phased approach to make sure we keep the money in the community and we make this sustainable. That phased approach is completely gone now. It's a $90 million ask, and we're going to have no jobs, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But again, I'm going to ask this body, do you think that our government should lie to people? In the application, well, let's get to, before we got to the application, there was conversations with DED about having a planning grant. Senator McKinney and I wondered, why would you need a planning grant when we've already paid $75,000 for a site study and a development study that was the basis of the $60 million at the time, and it laid out everything. So why not take that plan, put it in an RFP, and let's recruit the best businesses, the best venture capitalists, the best investment firms, and see if they'll go after that. They decided not to do that because of the chamber at the time wanted a planning grant to double down on what they were already planning on doing. Now, what's interesting about the chamber is, you heard in the press conference, if you watched it, they've been looking at this site for over 20 years. That's over half of my lifetime, and haven't done anything with that site. But now they're going to get $10 million to recruit businesses, according to their plan. The chamber, whose purpose is to recruit businesses, is getting an extra $10 million to recruit businesses. That's a high fee. And if you can ask any developer around here to recruit businesses for $10 million, which is, again, a $90 million grant, we're talking about 10%, that's a high developer fee at the expense of our community. But we'll go back to this initial grant. So we felt that there wasn't even a need for a planning grant. Let's throw it out there and let people come up with the best plan. Nevertheless, on October 22nd, they came out with a planning grant. DED said, in this planning grant, they want a master plan, a subcontractor plan, an ownership plan, a pro forma, and a partnerships with MOUs. I could live with that. If they could deliver all of those things, maybe this planning grant might be okay. To a cost of $400,000 to the state, that planning grant yielded no jobs and no substantially different idea than that was presented to this floor. So I'm not sure what we got for the $400,000, but here's what I mean by lying to the people. In that planning grant, it says, no proposal will be accepted if it displaces people. Think about that. No proposal will be accepted if it displaces people. That is called a guidance document. And underneath our laws, that guidance document is binding on the agency if they don't publicly retract it. And if you don't believe me, that's 84-901.03. Talks about guiding documents and when it's binding. 901 gives the definition. But instead of publicly saying we're going to retract that, they actually double down. They doubled down in February with a clarification saying we will not accept any proposal.
1 minute.
that includes displacing people. By the way, the grant was due at the end of October. We didn't get the grant till November, end of November, so they didn't even follow through on the contract for $400,000, but we'll give them another $86 million to do this. So the DED accepts a proposal that displaces people against the law. So DED sends out a thing saying we're not going to do this. The neighborhood believes that we have nothing to worry about my home because this grant doesn't apply. They switch it and accept a proposal that requires buying out all the land against the law. To make matters worse, in December, DED puts out another guidance document. That guidance, thank you, Mr. President.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne and Frederickson. Senator Wayne, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. So then in December 18th, we put out a new guidance document for a new grant. Lord, behold, ineligible funding proposals for this project with sites that are not vacant at the time of the application will not be considered. That is word for word. But do you know what's being considered? People's houses right now. Businesses being uprooted with no community engagement. We're talking about easements in Sarpy County, and there's been 4 community meetings. We're talking about uprooting people from their home for jobs, not saying it's bad, with no community engagement. The disrespect to District 11 and 13 is unbearable. Because nowhere will this happen in any other district. There will never be a project of this magnitude without community input in your district. But it's acceptable in mine. So we're going to spend a long time today talking. It's 9:51. Colleagues, this is 3 times 5 minutes. I got 10 more minutes. I have 22 amendments. You can call the question on each amendment. That means I have 10 minutes each opening, call the question. That is 4 hours. A little over 3 hours with the 20. But my staff is on standby ready to write more amendments. We could be here all day. Now, there are a lot of colleagues in this body who have said, let's not go all day. And some would agree only because it's not this body who is doing this. So this body should not be punished for actions of other people. So I don't know where I'm going to go today. I see some other people in the queue. But here is the frustration and the concern. We have one chance to get this right. We as a body have worked on this specific area for over 5 years. We have one chance to get this right because just last year, $15 million was vetoed because, according to the governor, we've already gave so much money to East Omaha. In the next 4 years, Senator McKinney comes down here and says, we need 20 more million, we need 5 million. People are gonna point back to this investment and say, we've already given X number of dollars. What have you done? See, that doesn't happen with property tax relief. We can give $1 billion and the next year we're gonna ask for another $1 billion. That doesn't happen for many of the other programs here where we give $300 million to education, but we'll give another $20 million for school safety. It only happens in poor and Black and brown communities where you get one shot. And we haven't even engaged the public. We haven't even engaged the community. But we're gonna literally build a business park inside of a community where there's still gonna be residents afterwards on the outside and have not talked to them. At $90 million, this legislature put together And I believe it was a 40-7-1 vote. And the one person didn't vote for it because I couldn't figure out how to get broadband
1
down the
minute.
street. That's a joke for Senator Bosselman. But at the end of the day, we got one shot. We have multiple projects going down. We have a company right now who is trying to come into this area, not specifically the airport park, that can bring 100 jobs here at a minimum of $50,000 to $60,000 a year. And now they're about to go to Kansas City because of the delays in the bureaucracy of the government. This legislature has worked too hard to support this effort for it to go down the wrong path. And for the developer fee to be $10 million to the chamber and $9 million to OEDC and Burlington Capital is wrong.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Senator Wayne, for this conversation this morning. I have a lot of thoughts this morning, and I started sort of jotting them down, and I'm not entirely sure how to prioritize them. What Senator Wayne has been talking about today and yesterday is really squarely about transparency and government oversight. And when we as the legislature pass legislation, we are still a partner in that legislation because we are the architects of it. And so if there are meetings happening to discuss the implementation, it makes sense to include those that were the architects of the legislation in that. I have grave concerns about our current governor and his administration. We are seeing an extreme devotion to eroding government transparency under Governor Pillen. Governor Pillen took an opinion and implemented it over law. We should have sued the governor. Flatwater Free Press, back in, let's see, when was this? August of this year, published an article about records requests that they had made to the governor. And the governor's office came back with very little response, mostly citing executive privilege, which former governors have publicly stated in response is not a thing, is not a thing. And then went on to lie about what was responsive to the records requests. How do I know that they lied? Because I have a text message from the governor on March 15th of 2023, and they told Flatwater Free Press that the governor had no text messages for the first 5 months of the year. Now, I'm assuming that I'm not the only person that Governor Pillen has texted. I'm going to read it to you because it's very salacious. Let me just tell you, everybody, this is really going to knock your socks off. At 8:28 a.m., I texted Governor Pillen and I said, can we meet at 9:15? I'd like to attend morning check-in. Would also you be okay with Justin Wayne and Danielle Conrad joining us? I believe they bring a broader perspective to the conversation than just me. His response, I have to be on the road at 9:35. Of course, fine for Justin and Danielle to join. We could do it at 9 if that would help. Unresponsive. This salacious text message. I don't think this is executive privilege. I don't think this is controversial. But he had no text messages that were responsive to the request of Flatwater Free Press, and that is a lie. And I am happy to share this with anyone. I know it is a very controversial text message about setting up a morning meeting before morning check-in, but there you have it. If he text messaged me, he probably text messaged other people. I I requested last year, and on the day of the State of the State, actually, with the full administration up there, I got a invoice from DHHS for $67,000 for a request I made that is 100% under the purview of me as a member of this body, as a member of HHS, providing oversight over the RFP process for our managed care contracts. And after a year of back and forth, I finally got them to give me the records without cost. And they said that every single email attachment was privileged. Some of these email attachments were like an attachment of the previous email. All of them blacked out, all of them privileged. We are eroding our democracy with this administration. And it is something that should be seriously scary for everyone in this state. This is unacceptable. And I have much more to say about this, but I think I am about out of time, so I will get back in the queue. Thank you, Senator Wayne, for this conversation.
That's your time. Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm getting on the mic to just speak about my experience since we were out of session and over the interim. And the number one thing that I could point out is a total lack of communication. Initially, after the summer, there was some communication, but after a while, that communication went away. It was disregarded, and it was like DED and the governor's office didn't care. And I'm going to point out a few things. First, last year when we were trying to pass 531, we had tried to set aside some money for project management. Governor's office said we didn't need it because DED could take care of it. We're like, really don't know, but okay, we still gonna get the bill passed. Then we get into the summer, poor lack of organizing and poor project management. No preparation for individuals that were gonna apply. The first initial meeting about applying was a waste of time. And everybody I talked to that was at that meeting felt like it was a waste of time. It could have just been sent in an email. They sent out the notice for that meeting 3 days prior, actually like on a Thursday or Friday, and gave individuals a weekend to figure out how to get there. Then they started to have online Facebook conversations, and they would only put out a day or a day and a half notice of those conversations until we said something like, why aren't you giving people a heads up? A lot of people that are applying work, have jobs, own businesses. They can't just stop their days just because you put out a notice a day prior, no matter if they're seeking a grant or not. So I just view it as a total dropping of the ball. Then when you get to the North-South Omaha grant program, we met with them and told them, you should not have minimum economic scores because it won't make sense and it excludes people. Because if you read the law, it says anybody that applied through the 1024 process is eligible to apply again. But that program excluded 100+ people from applying because they had minimum economic scores, and they forced people to ask the city of Omaha for letters of support. What if I don't have a good relationship with the city of Omaha? How am I going to get that support? How am I going to be able to apply? It's questions we ask, but they still went ahead and did it anyway. No updates until we pulled them into a hearing, I think in October or November, to answer questions. After that, really no communication, just emails here and there saying a bunch of nothing, just saying we're working, we're going to get back to you, but nothing of substance, honestly. And I've just been sitting and just thinking about this, and I just feel like after session ended, whoever, either in the governor's office or people outside the governor's office in the community or wherever, looked at how much money was going to North and South Omaha that could change those communities for the good for the future and said, no, we can't have this. If we let this happen, we lose, I guess, some power. We lose some influence. We can't give out fake awards every year saying we're changing things, but the reality on the ground is not happening. And that's mostly people in foundations, nonprofits, and rich people
1 minute.
who are poverty pimps. Then you got people that look like myself that go along to get along just because they get positions and things like that. I haven't stood up and said a lie at all. I just told the truth and spoke up for my community. And now the Department of Exclusion and dropping the ball is doing what they've always done, not cared about my community. So I hope y'all didn't put me on that escort committee, because if they couldn't meet with me, I can't escort the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Vargas, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you very much. I will be brief, and then I'll be yielding time to Senator Wayne if he would like it. I wanted to rise in support of the conversation, largely because being a member of the Economic Recovery Special Committee, we had these hearings discussing exclusion of certain applicants, and it was a concern to the committee as a whole that there was an additional process and programmatic guidelines that excluded individuals from being able to apply when we wrote in the actual grant language in LB 531 in the appropriations process that all the individuals listed in the appendices should be able to qualify. And I think that's true. I think it's, for the record, it's important to note that what both the senators are saying, that we should be corroborating these things, because if people are excluded from applying from grants, not even giving a fair shot to be able to compete for them, the question isn't whether or not they were chosen. At least for me, the question is whether or not people were allowed to even apply and be competitive for these grants. I also think that it's an important point on community input does matter. When we're talking about rural projects, community input from that area, from as many stakeholders as possible, is incredibly important. And so when we're allocating these funds, we should be listening directly to senators like Senator McKinney and Senator Wayne from North Omaha on whether or not this process is needed. And we were very iterative, as Senator Wayne mentioned. The plan that they put forward was very, very tailored to making sure that the dollars being used over time rather than one lump sum, which we're currently seeing from the North Omaha Airport project. So I wanted to make sure this was clear, because we heard this in the committee. The Economic Recovery Special Committee had these questions. They were concerned when we first brought to us, and I wanted to make sure to support that claim as well. So I will yield the remainder of my time to Senator Wayne, if you would like it.
Senator Wayne, you have 2 minutes and 55 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Vargas. So I was wrong about the 19 million is 21.1%. Somebody calculated that and texted to me. And here's what I want everybody to know. 90 million gets you a nice lot. That's what it says. And that's what DED put out as far as the grant, is that all you have to do is get these lots shovel ready. In what world would I have thought to spend $90 million to get more vacant lots in North Omaha? And 21% of that going to a developer fee. We don't know. And I'll send you guys the master plan. I sent some of you already. And I'll send you the previous plan. And you tell me if 75,000 and 400,000, if we got our money's worth. But the other thing about this thing is, you'll recall, and I can't say too much, that the city of Omaha, there was a story about the city of Omaha buying one of the sites in order to help move this along. That still hasn't been bought, but in their master plan, they say, due to the city of Omaha's due diligence, not their own, but due to the city of Omaha's due diligence, this area might require more dollars to be invested in. It was the city of Omaha who spent the money to follow up on that, not the $400,000 the state spent. So we didn't even do proper testing for the $400,000, but yet we're going to entrust
1 minute.
This partnership to spend 86 million to produce shovel-ready lots. And these are the facts. And I'm pretty sure these will be tied up in some lawsuits because what I just laid out was the agency didn't follow their own rules. But more importantly, those rules are binding on the agency unless they take them away, and they haven't. But I want to talk just a little bit more, I only have 1 minute, about this body and why I appreciate it. They took a chance. Senator Lowe said that was the best hearing he ever saw 2 years ago. And you know, Senator Lowe has not voted for one of my bills in 7 years. So to get that compliment was kind of amazing because we came together in North Omaha and wanted jobs and economic development. And instead, we're getting shovel-ready land. Maybe good for football, maybe good for some soccer.
That's your time, Senator.
But not jobs. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Raybold, you're recognized to speak.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, fellow Nebraskans tuning in to watch our deliberations today. I just want to address the issues that have been raised by Senator Wayne, Senator McKinney, and Senator Kavanaugh briefly, and then yield the rest of my time to Senator Wayne. Just to share briefly with you on grants. I was involved in the Board of Trustees for the Community Health Endowment Board of Trustees, and I had a unique position of reviewing many grant applications for funding on projects that specifically dealt with health initiatives and health improvements throughout communities in the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County. And when we looked at grants and grant funding, we were ecstatic when this grant that was presented to us showed collaboration, showed partnerships, especially stakeholders from the community, but every level of government, wherever and whenever that was appropriate, to demonstrate that you had partnership and buy-in from the stakeholders that it would directly impact and the government agencies that were willing to partner with you to make sure that your project could be either the project funding that you received could be leveraged to other agencies and other organizations that were going to buy into the success of this project that impacted the community or agency that you were seeking that. And so that's why I really commend Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney talking about the projects that they know about the community that they know so well. Senator Kavanaugh talked about transparency. That is so fundamental to government. As a commissioner and also city council member, that was essential. But most importantly, to our legislative body, it being so unique. And I always fall back to what Governor and Senator Norris was able to create working with the legislature. A common question raised during consideration of the unicameral was how to preserve the scrutiny that occurs between houses of bicameral and helps prevent abuses of power. Norris argued that legislation would be held in check by the state Supreme Court and the governor's veto power. More importantly, he said, the people's right to vote and petition would counteract the possible abuse of power by their elected officials. The Nebraska unicameral would have straightforward procedures and extend greater privileges to the press to allow for enhanced public scrutiny. He said, every act of the legislature and every act of each individual must be transacted in the spotlight of publicity. And that is why it's important that we have this dialogue and discussion. And I would like to ask Senator Wayne if you would like the rest of my time.
Senator Wayne, that's 1 minute and 35 seconds. And he waves. Thank you, Senator Raybold. Senator Lenahan, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I actually agree with much of what Senator Wayne, Senator McKinney have said. I was not as involved this summer maybe as I should have been when this was all unfolding, because I was doing something else. So I think this is a very important conversation and one we need to have. And whether it seems obvious to some of us or not, especially to newer members, they are defending the legislature here. And that is a very critical job that falls on all of us. But I also have great respect for the people in the balconies that have here today to hear our State of the State speech from the governor, and respect for them and others who may be watching this. I would like to make a point of order, which I have never done before, so hopefully I do this right. Point of order that this motion is not debatable, nor is it amendable.
Thank you for the point of order, Senator Linehan. From the chair, I find that your point of order is well taken and that this motion is not debatable. There's a motion to overrule the chair by Senator Wayne. Senator Wayne, you're recognized to open on your motion. A reminder, all members may speak once.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Linehan. It is kind of poetic justice that we're in a rules debate right now, and she brings up a point of order. Now, I will go back and say that this motion is debatable and amendable since the beginning of time. And in fact, I did this 4 years ago with Governor Ricketts then, and talked for 15 minutes while I was over there. So I have a history of that. But it's just funny to me because I've told everybody, rules don't need to be suspended. Rules don't need to be changed. It takes 25 votes. And this is a prime example of how it works. Anything on this floor, you can make a point of order and say that is out of line, Chair, and the chair can say it's in line or it's not. Or I think this is non-debatable. The chair can say it's incorrect or not. And every time the chair says that, you can raise your hand and say, I move to overrule the chair, no matter what the rule says. That's why our rules are what they are. You think you have to have 30? No, just get 25 votes on the floor and overrule the chair. So I still will see, I can see the writing on the wall that there's 25 people who don't want to do this. And I think Senator Linehan's point of the people in the balcony and having respect for them is correct. I also think it's not this body's fault for actually trying to have a conversation and push the administration forward. It's the administration's fault. But this is debatable and this is amendable, and history shows so. So we can take a vote, and present not voting doesn't mean that you're voting for me or against the chair. I'm the one who has to produce 25. And on a good day, I'll get 12 on this vote. Maybe 13 for a couple people who are symptomatic. Look, Hanson might just give me 1 vote. So this is the smartest thing that's been done all day. We're following the rules and we're making some things happen. But this is debatable and this is amendable. And so I would ask for a green vote on overruling the chair.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate Senator Linehan's words and her desire to honor the people that are here. I very much think that she's quite the stateswoman and has the best intentions and integrity of this institution at heart, and I thank her for that. I do oppose ending the debate on this because I do think that it is debatable and amendable, and I think that if we don't allow ourselves the flexibility to debate what we ourselves are doing, then we, again, like Senator Wayne said, discussing the rules, we are just restricting our own voices. So while I respect Senator Linehan's intention here, I am going to politely stand in opposition to that. And as this might depending on how the vote goes, be my last time to speak before the governor comes in and speaks. I want to talk about some of the other issues that I have concerns about, specifically around government oversight. So I talked about responsiveness to records requests, and I have come to realize that this administration is purposefully, intentionally skirting our ability to provide transparency, not just with the OIG, not just with denying records requests, but also with how they are conducting their day-to-day business. And I do believe that this legislature may need to take action and change our statute around what is acceptable in records requests, because now things are being handled in our departments in draft form. Because if something is in draft form and we request it, they don't have to give it to us. So as long as everything remains in draft form, we can never get access to those records. Additionally, the issues that Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney have been talking about, this is because we are taking our taxpayer dollars and we are giving them over to the hands of private citizens who are not subject to our open records requests and who are not subject to our open meetings laws. We need to fix this. These are taxpayer dollars, and they are honestly being wasted because they're being put in hands of people who are taking a massive cut off the top, whether it is a private corporation or even the nonprofit organizations that we are contracting with. They are taking an administrative cut off of the top before they do anything. But we can't afford $300,000 to feed children this summer, because we want them to be seen in person, even though they're not going to be seen in person. They're just going to be hungry. What are we doing in this state? We are actively harming children with our obstinance. Your philosophical debate over EBT or SNAP or any of the programs that provide services and financial support to children are irrelevant. You are hurting children. Full stop, period. And taking TANF dollars that could go into the hands of families to pay their electric bills, to pay their water bills, to have clean water, to have heat during these epic cold months. But instead, you're giving them to the United Way and the Nebraska Children's Family Foundation so that they can take a cut off the top. Millions and millions of dollars are going to nonprofit organizations who take a cut off of the top, and then that money trickles down eventually, sometime maybe, into a program that these families can go to that still doesn't feed their kids or keep the heat on. And these are the poorest of the poor people in Nebraska. And we are putting that money into the pocket of nonprofit administrators instead of in the pocket of the families that need it the most. Because we can't trust poor people. We can't trust people of color. We can't trust them to manage their own families, to take care of their children. We penalize them. We systematize poverty. We make it a full-time job. And then we do it under the guise of, well, we need to have eyes on those kids in the summertime. And if we do this, then they'll get fed, but we won't see them. Heavens to Betsy. We're not going to see them anyway, so let's feed them. Let's feed these kids.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator McKinney, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll continue on. So after we finished session last year, the governor's office and the Department of Punitive Services decided on the location of the prison that you guys decided to build, even though it's going to be overcrowded day one, and they still want to keep NSP open. There was outrage in Lincoln. We can't have a prison in our community. And then you know what happened? They found a new location. But when there's outrage in our community about this program that the Department of Exclusion and Dropping the Ball put out, no adjustments, no response to the community. We're just going to do what we want to do because we can. which is very sad. And that's why Senator Wayne stood up. That's why I'm standing up, because of the disrespect to our community. It's been disrespect my whole lifetime. And I thought possibly, just maybe possibly, when this legislature dedicated those resources to economically develop and help North and South Omaha, that maybe possibly there's some hope in this state. But over this past interim, all that hope left. There is no hope. They don't care. They rather see communities like North and South Omaha stay impoverished, which is not good for anybody, not myself, not you, or the state. As long as we keep these communities economically impoverished, we'll have poor educational outcomes. Our prisons probably might stay overcrowded. We'll have a lot of homelessness, but people want to arrest people that are homeless. It's just a sad state of affairs for the state of Nebraska, and that's just true. And then we got the issues with the Department of Punitive Services not allowing the ombudsmen in when they were not included in the AG's report. But one thing I'm not sure the people of this body is aware of, in Article 4 of our Constitution, Section 19, state institutions, management, control, and government determination by the legislature. The general management, control, and government of all state charitable, mental, reformatory, and penal institutions shall be vested as determined by the legislature. We are literally giving up our control by not forcing the Department of Punitive Services to allow the ombudsman back inside. It is against the Constitution, and people stand up and say they love this state and they love the Constitution and they swear by it, but we're violating it by not forcing them to allow the ombudsman in. And that is a problem. And it shows a lot of hypocrisy in this place, if I'm being honest. The Department of Exclusion and dropping the ball does not care about my community. And you know how I know this? Because when we initially started the economic recovery plan and talking to them, they said, oh, we've never considered economic development in North Omaha. We've never thought about it. Which is clear today. They don't care about economic development in Omaha. There's individuals that were literally picked as small, quick wins, which means they were supposedly guaranteed to get funding. But because they were a for-profit business, DED excluded them and offered them $50,000. And
1 minute.
And that is a fact. I know a business right now that should be receiving $1 million to help their business, but DED excluded them out of the rapid grants and only picked nonprofits, which I'm against, and they only offered them $50,000 when in the report, in the request, they were guaranteed $1 million. And why shouldn't I have a problem with that? Because they're not trying to help my community. They're just trying to bird feed us and hold us back. And that's just a fact. And that is the problem. And I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. I have no reason to lie. So when people stand up and talk around y'all circles that we're lying, stop lying and tell the truth. Tell them how you're selling our community out. Tell that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Nebraskans. I think I'm enjoying the conversation this morning, and I think a couple things are true at the same time. I'm enjoying this conversation. I remember the hearing that Senator Wayne is talking about in Urban Affairs. I'm the Vice Chair of Urban Affairs, and I agree with what Senator Lowe said. It was probably one of the best hearings we've had in a really long time, because we got to take the focus of supporting entrepreneurship and innovation, supporting small business owners in underserved communities in Omaha, and give them this platform of this committee hearing to tell us what they're doing, to tell us what they would do with this funding. And what I've heard over the past day and this morning about how a lot of community leaders, the governor, different philanthropic folks in Omaha really fumbled the bag and dropped the ball by excluding Senator McKinney, by excluding a lot of the people who are already leaders in this space, and sort of falling into the same pattern that perpetuates the problems we do see in North Omaha and Midtown, where the folks who are already doing the work, who are already exhibiting leadership, who are already close to the ground and know what it is that the people they serve need, are pushed aside for moneyed interests, for power, for whiteness, frankly, to come in and say, we actually know what's best for you. I sort of fell off this interim too. I was not a part of any of these conversations. I haven't talked to Senator McKinney or Senator Wayne very much this interim about what we're working on or what's going on in their communities. Our districts are neighbors. To the east, my neighbor is Senator McKinney's district. To the north, my district borders Senator Wayne's district. So the interests of their people matter a lot to me because that's the neighborhood that I grew up into, and I know that that's a lot of the people and interests that I represent as well. I had a tough interim. I really went through the ringer and tried to do everything I could to come back here in January ready to go. And I also think it's true what Senator Linehan said. That point is well taken. She is a stateswoman. She has a lot to be proud of, absolutely, in her career. But the chair himself said less than an hour ago that this motion is debatable. How are you going to have someone go use the rules, as Senator Wayne has done, to make a point, which is allowable under our rules, which is actually sort of part of the theater of politics, honestly. You can have your opinion about that, but that's what we're all doing here, is performing politics. And very rarely do we actually get an outcome that took a lot of hard work that we didn't know was already preordained. But we're all here acting like senators, playing senator. So when Senator Wayne is playing senator, not only that, but actually putting his money where his mouth is, standing up for the interests of his community, talking about the things that are already happening that people aren't acknowledging, then all of a sudden it's against the rules. Then it's not a debatable motion. But the chair just said less than an hour ago, yes, it was. So it can be true that we want to move on and hear the governor. We will. We will. I'm sorry for people who cannot stay to hear the governor because we're going to take more time, but you can watch it later or something. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. This is part of the work we do in this legislature, which is a separate and equal branch of government. And I would like this platform that we have here to be used for people like Senator Wayne and Senator McKinney and anybody in this body who has been slighted by people like the governor. Thank you, Mr. President. And has something to share about that under the umbrella of what is allowable by our rules. It takes statesmanship as well on the part of the governor, on the part of our colleagues here in this body, from community members and financiers, to make sure that we don't get to this point, that we don't leave people out of conversations where then we're kind of put in a position of being defensive, I guess. But the fact that we're having this conversation, people are listening. The balconies are full. Folks are here to listen, so it's a good time to talk. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Boson, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Wayne yield to a question?
Senator Wayne, will you yield to a question?
Yes.
Senator Wayne, is there something you'd like to say to address the body?
Yes, thank you. Out of respect for the people in the balcony and out of respect for this body, because they are not the ones who I think are fumbling the ball, I will withdraw my motion to overrule the chair.
The motion is withdrawn. We'll continue with the motion. Please state your point of order.
I would like to overrule the chair.
There was no ruling by the chair. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak. On the point of order.
I'm sorry?
You're recognized to speak on the point of order.
There was a ruling of the chair in favor of Senator Linehan's point of order, and Senator Wayne made a point of order to overrule that ruling of the chair. And he withdrew that, but we did not vote on it, and I am now making my own motion to overrule the chair.
You are recognized to open on your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. I appreciate Senator Wayne's wanting to allow us to move forward, but I do want us to vote on this because Senator Hunt made an extraordinarily excellent point that in allowing us to even begin the debate, when Senator Frederickson began, the chair essentially acknowledged that it was debatable. So again, I appreciate Senator Linehan's notion to get us moving forward. And I'm not going to belabor this point, but I do believe we should vote on this because the chair, the presiding officer, acknowledged that this was debatable in allowing us to debate it. And then he changed his mind when Senator Linehan made a motion. But that's not really how things work. And truly, colleagues, if we want our rules debate to have integrity, we need to be consistent, and we definitely need to be more consistent than we were last year. So I would like us to vote on this. Thank you, and I don't need to close.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator McKinney, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard the comment that, we should respect the people in the balcony, which is true. But for the people in the balcony that work for these agencies, I want you to respect my community and communities like mine when you're doing your job. That's what I want you to do. If you work for the Department of Hell and Harm, stop dropping the ball as far as taking care of kids in the child welfare system and do your job. If you work for the Department of Punitive Services, do your job and make sure the men and women coming out are better, rehabilitated. Make sure that the women in York have better water. Make sure that there aren't rats running through the kitchens of these institutions. Make sure there's proper programming. Make sure you're properly staffed. Don't send letters to the AG challenging a law that would help individuals inside and help with our prison overcrowding crisis. Don't do that. If you work for the Department of Exclusion and dropping the ball, act like you care about my community and do your job and uphold the law. Because currently the programs that you're implementing aren't according to the law. The law specifically said anybody that applied is eligible to apply again. You wrote a program that said the opposite. If you give out money, make sure there's outcomes and people ain't trying to make money. Especially nonprofits that have never cared about my community. We stood up and fought for that legislation because of the nonprofit industrial complex is a problem in North and South Omaha. Do your job if you want respect, whatever agency that you work for, especially if you're Black. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McKinney. See no one else in the queue. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to close.
This is a real roller coaster, friends. I said I wasn't going to close. Now I'm closing. After some conversation with my colleague, Senator Wayne, and I always say, I don't know what it means when Senator Wayne talks Senator Michaela Kavanaugh out of doing something, but I think you all should be a little terrified. I withdraw my motion to overrule the chair.
The motion is withdrawn. Members, the committee is to escort the governor to the chamber, consists of Senators Brewer, Conrad, DeBoer, Ibach, and Von Gilleren. Please escort the governor to the chamber.
Mr. President, your committee now escorting the governor of the great state of Nebraska, Governor Jim Pillen, and First Lady Suzanne Pillen.
President Kelly, Speaker Arch, and members of the 108th Nebraska Legislature, family, friends, and distinguished guests, my fellow Nebraskans. Over the past 11 days, Nebraska's experienced historically brutal winter weather. Sub-zero temperatures, back-to-back blizzards, unrelenting, paralyzing winds that much of our state, stranding hundreds of travelers, preventing farmers and ranchers from getting to their farms and taking care of their livestock, shuttering businesses, challenging our power grid, threatening safety and commerce of thousands. To meet this emergency, Nebraskans helped Nebraskans, just as we do in every single time, countless times before. State troopers, sheriffs, deputies, police officers, our first responders, snow fighters from across the state moved swiftly to rescue those trapped by the storms, clear roads, dig out our communities, and agriculture. These brave men and women represent the best and the backbone of our state. Public servants who rush into the storm and into harm's way to help their neighbors. It's because of them and because of the resilience of the toughest, hardest working people in this land that our state is as strong as ever. Thank you. In the balcony today to my left, we have the Nebraska State Patrol Sergeant Jesse Pfeiffer, Air National Guard Major David Strom, Department of Transportation District Operations Manager and Snow Fighter Tim Koenig. We thank them for their tireless service to Nebraska, and I ask you to join me in recognizing them as representatives of all of Nebraska law enforcement, first responders, National Guard, and highway workers. Could you please stand and be recognized? Thank you. You know, we must never recognize, we must never forget the reality of the hazards that our public servants face every day, keeping us safe and getting us to where we go. This past year, we, Nebraska, lost 2 of our DOT highway workers in the line of duty. Their names, Mark Wells and Dave Schwartz. I ask you all to join me in a moment of silence to honor their memories. Thank you. 1 year ago, time flies, doesn't it? I stood before you in this incredible chamber and pledged to be governor of all Nebraskans and to build relationships with all of their representatives. It's been my honor to do so. We did not agree on everything. God forbid if we did. But we certainly agreed that our kids are our future and we never, ever give up on our kids. United by these principles, together in 23, we accomplished much for Nebraska's future. We took major steps to make sure the state meets its school funding, promising to every kid in every district by investing in the $1 billion future fund to support K-12 education. This included a critical step forward in foundation aid of $1,500 per student and an overdue increase in special education funding. We invested in our workforce by guaranteeing state funding for our dynamic community college system to help increase to trade school degrees. We passed the Opportunity Scholarship Act, which will ensure that needy students from every corner of our state that have a chance at a good educational school that will be the best fit for them. To no one's surprise, the success of this program is obvious, with thousands of Nebraska kids already expressing interest in it. We're joined this morning, several are with us, including scholarship recipients Nia Bell from Omaha and Destiny Curtis from Norfolk. Nia is a junior and Destiny's an 8th grader. Please, if Nia and Destiny could stand, please welcome these students to our chambers this morning. On a side note, we talked in the last hour about all of us being comfortable, being uncomfortable, to grow and get better. And they knew all about it. You guys are awesome. It's good. Tough stuff. Sadly, union bosses and politicians are trying to rip scholarships away from kids like Nia and Destiny. When everybody'd understand that wouldn't be the case. I will fight to protect what we've worked hard to pass last year and call upon this body to do the same. Last year included major achievements in other areas. We took a big first step toward addressing mental health, the challenges throughout our state, with a unanimous creation of certified community behavioral health clinics. 2023 was groundbreaking year for fiscal conservatism as well. We agreed that the state government was spending too much money and taxing its people too much. We tightened our belts. We passed a historical conservative budget with only 2% growth. We agreed that taxing our senior citizens on Social Security is not the Nebraska way, and we ended it. Congratulations. We finally made our income tax codes competitive with our neighbors by reducing income tax rates to 3.99% by 2027. Agriculture is the heart and soul of Nebraska's economy, and we made big investments in its future and infrastructure. We supported value-added agriculture by increasing consumer ethanol access. We created strength in the Nebraska Broadband Office, which will leverage once-in-a-generation resources to ensure rural Nebraska businesses and farms and families can connect to a global economy. Thank you. That's a big deal. And we created the financing tools needed to finally finish our state highway expressway that's been underway for over 40 years in our state. We defended the unborn by restricting abortions beyond 12 weeks. We will continue to embrace life here in Nebraska with the launch of a year-long Culture of Life and initiative. It will provide resources to expecting moms, especially those in crisis who need support more than ever. Much more remains to be done, but this legislature should be proud of its investments in Nebraska's future. I can't thank you and commend you enough for our work together. Thank you. Thank you. We Nebraskans are a people grounded in our values. It's about faith, family, freedom, life, and love. We are a place of rich opportunities and one of the safest places to live in the world to raise our family. We have the gift of belief. It's among our greatest strengths that we believe we can compete with anyone, anywhere in the world. And we can, and we do, everywhere across this state. Blessed with these traits, our economy can weather any storm and emerge stronger. Our economic diversity is the foundation of this resilience. If agriculture slows, our manufacture keeps Nebraskans at work, and vice versa. Our banking sector, much of which is family-owned and deeply familiar with the businesses and the farming operations it serves, it provides the stability and liquidity needed for growth across the state. Because of sound, prudent regulation and a low tax burden, Nebraska has become an insurance capital, attracting strong companies, creating thousands of jobs, and an industry that today ranks in the top 3 in the United States. Yeah, that's incredible. And I might add, we're not too far from just passing Iowa as well. Our public university system has world-class healthcare and biosecurity assets, which attract patients and experts from across the globe. We are a sophisticated national security hub, hosting Stratcom at Offutt Air Force Base and providing the nuclear deterrence necessary to secure a troubled world. To support and grow these incredible economic assets, among our chief goals in state government must be to get government out of our way, reduce regulations and bureaucratic hurdles, and empower people and business to thrive. In our administration, we call this operation Clean Out the Closets, in which we try to identify every statutory and regulatory mandate that adds needless costs to healthcare, education, senior care, business of all kinds. We can do much in the executive branch, but we need everyone's help. So we can partner with you to complete this task and stay vigilant against new costly mandates. Together we can get government out of the way and focus on its core functions, right? Focus government on our core functions: safety, education, and infrastructure. This legislative session will be short and fast, but it holds incredible promise and opportunity for our state. There is a tremendous amount of the people's work we must accomplish to make this a better, safer, and stronger place for every Nebraska kid, family, business, and farm. If we are thoughtful, principled, and keep the interest of all Nebraskans before us, I don't have a shadow of a doubt that this has the opportunity to be the most impactful legislative session in our history. First and foremost, the most important economic issue we face is out of control property taxes. Anyone that has been out in the state, I've been everywhere in the last 3 years, by the way, property taxes. It's property taxes, property taxes, and property taxes. This crisis is not new. It's been hurting Nebraska's farmers, ranchers, homeowners, and businesses for most of all of our lifetimes in this chamber. High property taxes hurt every Nebraskan in every single part of our state. It must be fixed now. Property taxes are so out of whack, you don't even need to own property to be adversely affected. They are the most regressive tax government imposes on its people. Fixed income Nebraskans who have lived, worked, and raised their families here now face the prospect of being forced out of their homes due to out of control property taxes. That is unacceptable, but we have several proposals for all of us to work together to fix it. Senator Linehan has introduced a hard cap on local spending, which can be overridden only by the vote of the people. This measure is critical, as only a hard cap will force our local governments to finally curb spending. Senator Dover has a bill that will repurpose existing credits so all property taxpayers can benefit from this relief, not just those with the best accountants. His bill will also add $1 billion in new property tax credits. Critical of all of these credits will be front-loaded so the property taxpayers will see them directly under property tax statements instead of hanging to go through an onerous process to claim them in their income taxes months later. Through hard work, collaboration, and setting politics aside, we must find the revenue to support this top property tax relief. Senators Von Gerler, Kauth, Meyer, Merman, Albright, and Linehan have offered several bills to close tax loopholes created by special interests at the expense of the middle class. We have examined over 500 agency cash funds, and we will transfer $274 million from those to support property tax relief. And just in case you're wondering, after that transfer, in those 500 cash agency accounts, we still have $2.49 billion, that's with a B, billion dollars in those cash funds. And that's not even counting the $1.25 billion in our general and cash reserve fund. So add that up. It is not the job of government to hoard cash, and we must give it back to the people. We must lower our overall tax burden, widen our tax base, and end the era of special tax breaks. Tax policy must benefit our state as a whole, not whoever has the best lobbyist. With these changes, Nebraska property tax bill will be cut by 40% this year. Thank you. I know, I have 100% confidence that there is the will, the good faith, and the knowledge and the ability in this chamber to solve it. And I pledge to work with all of you as long as it takes to get this done. Nebraska government remains too big at every level. Since my inauguration, we have been relentless in searching for efficiencies, cutting costs, ending bloating contracts, and working to meet the performance improvement targets this legislature set out before us last year. We must do more, including by structurally reducing the excessive number of boards and commissions that have been built up in Nebraska government over the years. At last count, we have over 200 state boards and commissions, many of which are redundant or oversee activities that can be eliminated. Senator Brewer has introduced a measure that would eliminate 48, about 20% of our boards and commissions. It's a start. I urge the legislature to make the most of this opportunity to shrink unnecessary government. For over a century, Nebraska has been the land of opportunity for newcomers. For years, we have used income tax abatement as our main tool to incentivize companies to come to Nebraska. This has yielded many success stories and thousands of good, well-paying careers for hardworking Nebraskans. But going forward, we must make sure we are not giving our topsoil away by giving incentives to foreign companies who view Nebraska merely as a conduit for cheap electricity, free water, and cheap labor. We must align our economic incentives to strengthen not only value adding new businesses, but also Nebraska-owned, Nebraska-led businesses which have been building our economy for generations. That is why I'm working with Senator Linehan to reform our current incentive package to make Nebraska's incentives competitive in the manufacturing sector for Nebraska-grown companies. While we want to create and incentivize great careers in Nebraska, we must focus more on recruiting people to the good life. We must retool our incentives to be people-focused. One priority brought by Senator Brewer will be strengthening the ranks of our great Nebraska National Guard by exempting its members from state income tax. While significant, this is the least we can do to honor them for all they do for our state and our nation. Thank you, Colonel Brewer. Thank you for your own service and your commitment to the armed services. Thank you, Colonel Brewer. We will incentivize new Nebraskans to join our private workforce too. Senator Ballard has introduced an innovative bill that will give Nebraska businesses credit for bringing new residents to our state. Passing this bill will be another investment into our workforce. But we must recognize that investing in the 21st century workforce is far different than what we've ever done before. No longer can we focus on tax breaks on companies that are takers, not givers, and do not share our values. With input from our working group, that focused on workforce development over the past 6 months. We've come forward with proposals in childcare, early childhood education, housing, and general education. I partnered with Senator Bostar in legislation to create a micro center network. This will allow local communities and businesses to get creative with existing space and resources to meet their childcare needs. To build the housing we need for our workforce, we should invest an additional $25 million into the Rural Workforce Housing Fund. Thank you. All across rural Nebraska, the demand for workforce housing is so great that the homes are sold before the doors are even hung. But it's just not a rural issue. Housing affordability and availability is an incredible issue in our metropolitan communities as well. Part of the shared problem is local over-regulation of affordable housing. That's why I'm partnering with Senator Lowe on lowering the regulatory burden for affordable housing. A recent UNO study showed that regulation as a component of construction is over $40,000 higher here in Nebraska than the national average. Simply makes no sense and unacceptable. We must cut the red tape out and make our homes more affordable in Nebraska. I'm partnering with Senator Waltz to break down the barriers for potential teachers to enter the workforce. I ask this question all the time. I'd like us all to think about it. Who are the top 3 people that impacted your life the most? I guarantee when we take the time to think about it, all 49 of us will answer one of the 3 is a teacher or a coach. And I tell you what, if someone would have told me that, or I would have known and understood that impact, I would have been a coach. It is one of society's most important professions impacting our young people. That is why we must allow for reciprocity of teachers coming from another state and simplify how to apply for and receive teaching certificates. Teaching shortage is a crisis. That way, more Nebraskans can easily choose this honorable profession. Finally, I'm working with Senator Linehan to change our incentive credits to direct them toward housing, childcare, and early childhood education for Nebraska. Outside the building, the state government must do more collectively to allow our institutions of higher education to meet the workforce needs of tomorrow. I look forward to partnering with our University of Nebraska, our state college system, and community college system to launch the One Nebraska initiative. The goal will be to eliminate endless duplication and inefficient competition between our state-funded schools, along with finally harmonizing and strengthening our Regents scholarship program. We will make sure that our higher education keeps our best and brightest here and trains them to lead Nebraska into future. These efforts will stop the brain drain, will welcome new Nebraskans, and will help businesses, ranchers, and farmers thrive. And speaking of attracting people to Nebraska, it's really, really tough to do with this slogan that says, Nebraska, not for everyone. Looking ahead, even beyond this session, it is critical that we strengthen our water laws to guarantee that this priceless resource is not diverted to solve water management failures in other parts of the country. We must invest to incentivize ag producers to use less water to raise more. Better measurement tools, more use of technology, and more innovation will enable us to use less water while irrigating more crops right here in Nebraska. With our water being the envy of the world, we cannot allow adversarial foreign interests the ability to take it. That is why I'm partnering with Senator Decay to modernize Nebraska laws on land ownership to prohibit purchase by adversaries. This bill would tighten up those restrictions and provide a clear directive for enforcement. Additionally, this bill rescinds exemptions for foreign ownership, such as foreign oil, gas, and mineral development in the state. The world is not the same as it was in the 50s. That's the last time these laws have been reviewed. It is imperative to keep enemies in our country from owning land in our state, especially near sensitive military installations. I am also partnering with Senator Bostar to ban enemies like China, North Korea, and Iran from bidding on any public contracts that deal with security-related items like IT, communication networks, and infrastructure. As I close, I want to share with you an incredibly profound moment in my first year as your governor. Early last year, I was privileged to be the first governor to join a conference of Nebraska's tribal leaders in South Sioux City. While there, one of the tribal leaders shared with me what he had learned from his grandfather. His grandfather taught him that whenever community comes together, wherever we're working, making important decisions for the people's future, that they are guided by their actions, that they have an impact for a long time. And I said, yeah, I get it. And he said, no, Mr. Governor, you don't get it. My grandfather taught us 7 generations. That, I found that incredibly powerful, and it impacted me every day since. It's come to be my guide for public service. I hope that it may impact you as we work, that we start thinking about 7 generations. And if you think about it, it's been roughly 7 generations since Nebraska was founded. Just think, some in this room has forefathers that were here. Just think of our forefathers, think of our pioneers who poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this land, not only for themselves, but for their kids and grandkids and for generations to come. Their hard work, their grit, sacrifice, and optimism is totally reflected on who we are today. So as we do the people's business in the days and weeks and months ahead, we should never forget that we are working for the future of generations of Nebraskans so that they may inherit the same safe, strong, and prosperous Nebraska that we enjoy today. If we look beyond localized interests and set politics aside and instead put the best interest of Nebraska as our sole guiding principle, I have no shadow of a doubt that we can win for agriculture, for business, for our taxpayers, for our kids, and for our future. Together we can. And then, speaking of an impact for 7 generations, thank you to this body for partnering past session to launch a $5 million investment into mentoring organizations across the state. Because not every kid needs a mentor, every kid deserves one. And the lifetime benefits of mentoring cannot be overstated. And that's why I'm really honored to be joined today by one that I mentored me. Just an extraordinary public servant of Nebraska, Coach Osborne. Coach has been an incredible leader in creating mentoring opportunities for thousands of kids, and he's just an incredible inspiration to all of us. Will you please join me in recognizing Coach and everything he's done for Nebraska? A couple of us even remember him being a pretty darn good football coach too. Well, let me finish up by saying thank you for your friendship and your partnership in the service of the people we collectively represent. It goes without saying, none of us here could answer this call to service without the support of our families. Personal sacrifice that everybody makes in this chamber's off the charts. And it couldn't take place without the support of our families. I'm incredibly grateful for mine and for the support of First Lady Suzanne. Thank you, dear. And I have my number one cheerleader, my granddaughter Hallie, a fifth grader here. Hallie, you stand up and just give everybody a wave, would you? And so thanks to you, and thanks to all your families, because together we can make an incredible difference of public service in Nebraska. And let me just finish by what an incredible privilege it is to partner and work with you. And I look forward to the days ahead. God bless you, and God bless the incredible, incredible state of Nebraska. Thank you for the time today.
Committee, please escort the governor from the chamber.
Follow. Make sure he doesn't get away.
Members, please find your seat. Senator Frederickson would like to announce the physician of the day, Dr. Steve Williams of Omaha. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, amendments be printed from Senator Decay. Additionally, new bills, Speaker Arch at the request of the governor. It's bill for enacting appropriations, amends section 21, 26, 68, 71, 76, 77, 78, 79, 83, 85, 87, 90, 91, 93, 94, 95, 97, 101, 02, 03, 04, 05, 06, 13, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24, 30, 31, 32, 33, 35, 36, 50, 57, 65, 73, 219, 221, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, 32, 35, 36, 41, 54, 55, 67, 68, 80, 82, 85, 90, 301, 306, and 307. Defines terms, provides changes, and eliminates appropriations for operations of state government, post-secondary education, state aid, and capital construction. Provides changes and eliminates appropriations of funds allocated to the state of Nebraska from the Federal American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, 42 U.S.C. 802 as amended, repeals the original section, declares emergency. Legislative Bill 1413, introduced by Senator Arch at the request of the governor's bill for enacting relating to funds, amend sections 8, 604, 29, 22, 62, 07, 37, 323, 345, 37, 431, 48, 621, 62201, 59, 16, 08, 04, and 81, 15, 05, 05, as well as section 61, 405, 71, 812, 79, 810, 81, 1201, 21, 81, 12, 146, 1558, 84, 512, section 37, 1804, 48, 62202, 61, 224, 71, 76, 11, 79, 3501, 84, 612, 85, 2009, and 86, 324. Transfers and provides for the transfer of funds, creates a fund, changes the use and distribution of funds, harmonized provisions, repeals the original section, declares emergency. Legislative Bill 1414, introduced by Senator Linehan at the request of the governor's bill for enacting revenue and taxation, amends sections 13.518, 13.519, 520, 77, 27, 142, section 77, 1776, 17, 77, 27, 144, 346, 6203, and section 77, 1632, as well as 77, 1633. Adopts the Property Tax Growth Limitation Act, changes provisions relating to budget limitation, harmonized provisions, repeals the original section, declares emergency. Legislative Bill 1415, introduced by Senator Dover at the request of the governor's bill for enacting revenue and taxation, amends sections 81, 12, 193, section 77, 6702, and 77, 6703. Adopts the Property Tax Relief Act, changes the Nebraska Property Tax Incentive Act as prescribed, harmonized provisions, repeals the original sections, and declares emergency. Legislative Bill 1416, introduced by Senator Bostar at the request of the governor's bill for enacting child care, adopts the Child Care Capacity Building and Workforce Act. Legislative Bill 1417, introduced by Senator Brewer at the request of the governor's bill for enacting the government sections, amend sections 2509, 2517, 518, 519, 1803, 4901, 5003, 506, 38, 2506, 3824, 38308, 3811503, 432405, 48603, 661768, 718214, 7815, 711734, 711749, 711749, 7177, 7706, 7899, 724, 7821, 566, 815028, 85 1404, 85 1607, 86 444, 86 516, 86 551, and in the receipt, as well as section 78, 77, 21, 2006, 2603, 2004, 2043, 445, 1903, 9644, 2001, 72, 4316, 4206, 44, 2001, 2007, 7006, 7416, 2002, 216, 7010, 7674, 8 is 1 802, 8 is 3, 1503, 4, 5, 56, 78, 702, 86, 40. 461, 86, 1101, and 86, 1102, as well as sections 38, 167, 71, 7104, 79, 888, 861103. Creates, eliminates, terminates, and provides changes, eliminates, and transfers powers, duties, and memberships of boards, commissions, committees, councils, task force, panels, authorities, and departments, changes and eliminates funds, harmonized provisions, repeals the original section, outright repeals section 43, 4003, 5603, 71, 7105, 71, 7110, 71, 7113, 79, 862, 79, 864, 79, 865, 79, 869, and 79, 871, and sections 43, 1306, 79, 861, and 79, 863. Turning to the agenda, Mr. President, Senator Erdman would offer proposed rule change 3.
Senator Erdman, you're recognized to open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Been a little delay this morning, but here we are talking about a very important rule change, one that I thought was peculiar 8 years ago when I signed up to be a state senator, and it still seems peculiar to me. So as we begin the debate on the rules, I had made some opening remarks a couple of days ago, and several people have alluded to the fact that our rule book needed to be rewritten. I believe they agree that our rules are very difficult to understand the way they're written now, and that whole rule book needs to be changed, and I did have a proposal to do that. So that'll be for someone in the future to do. Whether they adopt the changes that I put in that rule book change is up to them. So today we're going to talk about open voting. And as you will see on the amendment that you have at your place, you have two sections that we're dealing with. It's Rule 1, Section 1, and that deals with the election of the executive board members as well as the speaker by secret ballot as it's currently written. So what the rule change does, it just basically strikes a secret ballot and says a roll call majority vote of the elected members of the legislature. And the elected members in this Rule 1 are those that I just described, and whereby it says each senator shall state the name of the candidate of his or her choice. And then we're also amending Rule 3, Section 8, and that is the election of chairmen and chairpersons. And so what we're trying to do with this rule change is anyone who has a leadership position in any standing committee, they will be elected by open voting. I visited with Senator Conrad this morning, and I told her that if she would like, that I could give the opposition's opinion on this, and then when I finished, she could just put her light on and say, I agree. And she smiled. I don't believe that'll be the case. But let me go through some of the reasons why we need to make this change. This body functions on trust. And if you can't trust people, it's a difficult place to work. In the past, we've had people serve in this body that their word was absolutely worthless. They would agree to something, even to the point when they agreed to something, wrote it on their letterhead, signed it, they still tried to back out on their position. So what happens here is we have a secret ballot, and people tell others that I'm going to support you for this chairmanship, and then the vote is taken, and they find out that they got less votes than they had commitments for. And so then for a long period of time after that, they're trying to determine who didn't tell them the truth, who lied to them. And so they may mistrust somebody that they thought changed their vote when they didn't, or the person who did vote against them and lied to them, they may trust them. So this is based on trust. In 17, and I made this comment back in 17 on the 28th day, it was the first time I spoke on the microphone, and I said this: we changed every committee chairperson there was in 17. We elected freshmen to chairmanships. We did that because we figured out how to use the secret ballot. No one had done it quite like we did that time. Had we had open voting, we'd have never pulled that off. For you see, believe it or not, I voted for a Democrat. That Democrat's Justin Wayne. I've voted for Justin Wayne every time he's ran for a position. I'm not ashamed of that. I wouldn't have been afraid to say that on the floor of the legislature. But what we have when we have secret ballot, we have those who trade votes. You vote for me, I vote for you. No one will know I voted for you on the other side of the aisle. And that's what we have. We've had that for a long, long time. And people have figured out how to use it to their advantage, but we did that once. That was an amazing day. On the 6th vote that day, the person that sat next to me came and asked if he could mark the rest of my ballot for me. He had figured out that we had discovered how to use a secret ballot. In my district, I have yet to meet a person who said they want us to vote by secret ballot. Maybe in your district it's different. But I think every vote that we cast here should be open and transparent. And you will hear those who are opposed to this open voting rule change that they think it's important, it's vital that we have the media in executive session. Transparency. We need transparency. But they're opposed to being transparent on their vote for committee and leadership. You can't have it both ways. And so what we presented here today to you is an opportunity for us, once and for all, and we've been talking about this for years, is to bring this to a forefront, bring it to a vote, and allow the body to settle this once and for all. Do we want to be transparent? The question is, do we want to be transparent or not? Because you see, there are secret deals made behind closed doors on the secret vote. And you will hear people say, this is a nonpartisan body. That is not true. It has never been nonpartisan, and it never will be. So we say it's nonpartisan because we're trying to make ourselves, convince ourselves that it is. It's not. Hit it head on, face it. There's not anybody in this room that actually believes this is a nonpartisan body. George Norris put this body together in the form of a unicameral because he knew that the population was shifting to the east, and the east would have the authority. And this rule book that we have in front of us today is a result, and you can see the fingerprints all over every one of these pages by Senator Ernie Chambers and Patrick O'Donnell. They have constructed this rule book in a way that makes the minority have the authority. Now, I know you're not supposed to say these kind of things on the mic, but that's exactly what has happened. So for 45, 50 years, those two gentlemen constructed this rule book to protect the minority. If this was a bicameral, if it were, the minority wouldn't even get a bill to the floor. But in this body, the minority is 35% of the elected officials. The majority is 65%. But with 65%, you accomplish absolutely squat unless you get 66 2/3. So I'm not asking to squelch or to silence the minority. What I'm asking is to have the majority finally have the ability to do what the majority wants to do. So we will open this for discussion. There will be many reasons that they give why we shouldn't vote for this. It may hurt someone's feelings or whatever other reasons they may have. But the bottom line is we need to be open and transparent so those who elected us understand how we vote.
1 minute.
Thank you. And some will say, well, you can sure announce to everybody how you voted. I understand that. But we need to be able to understand what kind of deals are made behind closed doors. And this is open and transparent. And this is open and transparency. So I would encourage you to vote green on rule number 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Erdman. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, as it pertains to the amendment to the permanent rules offered by Senator Erdman, Senator Conrad would move to recommit the proposed rule change to the Rules Committee.
Senator Conrad, you're recognized to open.
Thank you. And Mr. President, just so I can gather my thoughts appropriately, I have 10 minutes to open. Is that correct?
Yes, 10 minutes.
Very, very good. Thank you so much, Mr. President. And thank you so much to my friend, Senator Erdman, not only for the shout out, but for his leadership in regards to the Rules Committee. I am proud to share a warm professional relationship with Senator Erdman, even though we find a few things to disagree on in public life. We find a lot of other things to come together and work on in service to the great state of Nebraska. And one thing that I truly and sincerely admire about Senator Erdman is that he is straightforward about what his position is. He does not hide the ball. He is transparent, he is consistent, and he is principled according to his set of values and ideologies. And I think he's also very tenacious in his work. So I definitely admire and respect that about him. We do have principled disagreements, though, about matters before the legislature, including the proposed rule change that he has put forward this year that has been advanced by the Rules Committee for our consideration and deliberation this year. So before we get too deep into the minutia, I want to make sure to recognize that in addition to our shared values and commitment to public service, I absolutely and wholeheartedly share my friend Senator Erdman's commitment to transparency and open government. I have worked on those issues tirelessly as a member of this body for 10 years. I have worked on those issues tirelessly as a civil rights lawyer, trying to hold big government accountable to the people through our open records laws, through our open meetings laws. And there is absolutely no disagreement when it comes to the values of transparency and openness in government that I do believe we share, and I hope that we share, and I hope each of us in this body shares. However, there are important distinctions herein. When it comes to leadership votes via secret ballot, you can still effectuate our shared values of transparency through a host of other remedies beyond changing the sacredness of a secret ballot for leadership positions. Has always been our practice in the legislature and is the practice in other branches of government, literally according to our state laws, because there's a difference between an election and a vote. And that's something that we need to keep in mind as we frame up this debate. If Senator Erdman or Senator Slama or others that have most voraciously pushed this change want to share their vote that they're casting for various and sundry leadership positions, nothing's stopping them. They have a host of remedies to do that. They could take a ballot selfie, put it out on social media, publish it in the local paper. They can stand up in the middle of leadership elections and offer a nomination of another senator or throw their support publicly behind another senator. It doesn't happen that often beyond the nominations, but it is permissible under our rules. Or you can do what Senator Carol Hudkins did years ago after a hotly contested election. She stood up after the election and invoked a point of personal privilege and told the world how she voted in a leadership position. There are a host of ways to share how you're going to vote for a leadership position that doesn't require changing anything in the rule book or taking away the secret ballot from other senators who may want it, because the sacredness and the secrecy of the ballot in an election belongs to the elector, whether that's in a private ballot box or whether it's on the floor of the legislature. And the reason behind the secret ballot in an election is to protect against intimidation and coercion, period. That's why it has been developed. That is why it is a longstanding bedrock in our democracy. And so attempts to change that are attempts to heighten intimidation, are attempts to heighten coercion, are attempts to undermine the unique features of our beloved unicameral legislature, which has stood the test of time for over 80 years. And my friend, Senator Erdman, I know has strong feelings in regards to how our rule book was written and what the founder, Senator George Norris' motives may or may not have been in regards to the endeavor to establish the nonpartisan unicameral legislature. But he is absolutely wrong on a few points. Number one, the Nebraska Constitution was not given to us by George Norris or Patrick O'Donnell or Senator Chambers. It was given to us by the Nebraska people, and we have to be careful stewards therein. And when you look specifically at Article 3, Section 7, it's plain on its face. We are a nonpartisan institution. That's not my opinion. That's literally what the Nebraska Constitution says. And we need to be stewards of that. Additionally, look at Article 3, Section 10. It is unequivocal on its face. The people have given us this Constitution that the legislature has the primary and only authority to set our own internal rules, including in this instance. So I know it's convenient sometimes when we're making a passionate argument to leave out some of those facts, but we shouldn't gloss over them, because when it comes to primacy of authority, the Constitution is first, statutes next, our rules after that, custom and tradition after that, and Masons as a final last default source. So we can't and we shouldn't gloss over the Nebraska Constitution, which was gifted to us to steward. Senator Erdman, Senator Slama, and those who have pushed for this measure for years. And this is nothing new, colleagues. I know Senator Erdman had proclaimed that he was going to rewrite the rule book to get after the filibuster last year. Secret ballots have nothing to do with the filibuster last year. This is a perennial issue to undermine the integrity of a nonpartisan unicameral legislature and inject partisan intimidation, coercion, and control into this proud body against the will of the voters. So let's be clear. Since inception, party bosses have fought against a nonpartisan unicameral legislature. And after it was adopted, they've attempted to take down the nonpartisan unicameral legislature for decades. Their efforts have been thwarted appropriately by smart men and women who served in this body and stewarded the people's will forward in a nonpartisan manner. And we should continue that proud tradition today. Again, my friend Senator Erdman, Senator Slama, and others who have voraciously pushed for this rule change have never availed themselves, to the best of my knowledge, in utilizing other remedies available to them to forecast to their constituents or their colleagues how they were voting in individual races. In fact, just 10 days ago, we took secret ballot elections, all of us, in the executive board races. Nobody raised a finger, nobody raised a hand to telecast how they were voting beyond how they voted via secret ballot. Same for taking up leadership positions last year, that basically all went the way the majority wanted them to go, nevertheless. But Senator Slama, Senator Erdman have been crystal clear in their intentions, and I appreciate their candidness.
1 minute.
They have brought measures, Mr. President, thank you, to abolish the Nebraska unicameral nonpartisan legislature, to get rid of nonpartisanship and to get rid of our proud one house that has a small membership, that is nonpartisan, that has no secret conference committee. They've been clear about their motives, and I appreciate that. But those efforts have not carried the day, and that's because Nebraskans do not wish that we follow down the path of partisan dysfunction that plagues our federal government and our sister states. Not only do Nebraskans cherish nonpartisanship in their values, we see it in their actions. Poll after poll says people want less partisanship in government. Every single time we look at those registration numbers, more and more Nebraskans are leaving the traditional political parties to become independent and nonpartisan.
That's your time.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Conrad. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Thank you, Mr. President. An announcement. The Reference Committee will meet upon recess in room 2102. Reference Committee meeting upon recess in room 2102. Mr. President, finally, priority motion. Speaker Arch would move to recess the body until 1:30 p.m.
Members, you've heard the motion to recess until 1:30. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. We are in recess.